Since our world is shifting, we recognize we needed to shift our approach to stay connected with you. For those of you who are new, welcome.
We have come a long way in terms of improving diversity in our industry, but just because we've traveled a little bit further than where we were does not mean that we are anywhere close to equality or anywhere close to having an industry that reflects the talents, the ideas, the creativity of a broad spectrum of our population.
Diversity is being invited to the party. Inclusion is being asked to dance. And who doesn't like to dance? I know I do.
We appreciate the entire community for coming, joining us. So thanks so much, guys, and we'll see you next time.
Hi, my name is Jess Simmons, and I work in the Energy and Location Strategy team at Google, which looks after everything related to the procurement of data center infrastructure, energy procurement, and energy policy for Google's products worldwide. I'm based in London. I first engaged with WTF back in 2018 at a fantastic event at the Shard, and I've been asked today to introduce our wonderful speaker, Stacy Penright, who will talk us through 5 ways to remove yourself from workplace drama. But just before I do that, I just wanted to take the opportunity on behalf of the WTF squad to make an exciting announcement, which is that WTF will be launching a European chapter, which I'm involved in, and we will kick that off with a virtual masterclass later this year. So do stay tuned and do spread the word, as we're keen to expand our membership within EMEA. But now let's move on to the reason why we're all here, which is to hear from the wonderful, inspirational Stacy. Stacy is a corporate business initiative consultant with Wells Fargo by day and a community leader by night. Throughout her career, Stacy has found ways to incorporate service into her life. She started out by volunteering with local organisations, feeding the hungry, teaching financial literacy, and mentoring young students, among other activities. And in 2015, recognising an unaddressed need, Stacy created the non-profit Respect My Voice, which offers free community educational seminars devoted to building wealth, personal branding, health and wellness, and communication. She has been in Houston for more than a decade via New Orleans. So without much further ado, I'll now hand over to Stacy. Thanks very much.
Thank you so much, Jess. Really appreciate that. And hi, everyone. As Jess mentioned, I'm Stacy Penright, and I'm very happy to be with you guys today. I love that video at the beginning because of that quote where diversity is being invited to the party and inclusion is being asked to dance. That's so true. I can tell you, I came up with the concept of my 5 steps from removing yourself from workplace drama. I worked in a very diverse team, and we were diverse, not just ethnically and gender diverse, but also through our experiences and our upbringing. So we were a pretty diverse group. But here's the part. They really weren't interested in asking you to dance. They were more focused on, even though we have this diverse background, we want you to fit into this circle. And if you don't fit into this circle, then you're not included. You don't get to be a part of it, and your ideas aren't valued. I quickly realized I'm not going to change that. We can't change the way other people think. We can't change the type of behaviors they do. What we can do is we can change what we do and what we react to. And that is something that I had to really work on. Now, it was definitely trial and error, a lot of fail, a lot of success. And I would literally write down different techniques. And I talked with it with my friends. We were all in different industries, which is really crazy. And yet we seem to always have similar stories. Now, I know a lot of you are you're all in tech with your respective companies, but I'm sure you heard of some similar stories where you're like, I got a person that does that. Or that sounds just like so-and-so who works in my group. They're just like that. It's not the industry. It's just working with different individuals. So with that said, I put this together, I tested it out, and surprisingly, people wanted to hear about it and allowed me to do a TED Talk. So I wanted to share those steps with you guys today. All right, let's go to our step 1. Sure, I have my little notes here. Step 1. This is where we're going to rewind and reflect, also known as, what did I do? Now, throughout this presentation, I'm going to go over some scenarios with you guys. These scenarios will be provided later, but as we look at each step, we're going to kind of add it into that scenario. And it's going to be very interactive. So we have the chat available. Please give me your thumbs up. This is exactly what I've seen. Tell us similar stories, or if you have any questions throughout. So here's our scenario. You're working on a team project and you're the only woman. You were selected as team lead, and throughout the entire project, you find yourself spending more time justifying your worth and a reason why you're a good fit than actually leading. Now, in the middle of the discussion that's now getting a little heated, you're going over individual assignments, and one of your teammates mentions he prefers the assignment you've assigned yourself because he feels that he can do it better. So you give your rebuttal. He then interrupts you and tells you, there's no need to be defensive. Calm down. And as you're trying to continue and articulate your point, the rest of your team members agree you're making the situation a little bit more emotional or dramatic than it had to be. Okay, so that's our scenario. Unfortunately, it's not very unique. Now, when we look at step 1, rewind and reflect, this is not about victim blaming. This is not about you going back and saying, I did everything wrong. No, this is about you're looking at the situation and what role did you play. Okay, so I picture everything for myself like a movie. I have a hero, I have a villain, and naturally we're like the heroes of our own, right? So when I look back, I take the emotion out. I just try to look at it scene from scene, as if I'm reading a script. Now, in this particular scenario, I cannot change how he thinks. He thinks that he should be assigned this because he feels he would do it better. He also probably has some other feelings of, I'm not qualified to do this. That's not my focus. But what did I do? I engaged. I went back and defended a job that I already had. So why would I have to reapply for a job that I've already gotten for someone who didn't have the hiring decision in the first place? So that's something when I look back, when I rewind and reflect, I look at certain situations of the part I played and how can I pivot. When I go back into that and I'm thinking to myself, okay, if I'm not going to then defend the job, I then need to just do what? Show my experience. This is the assignment. This is how we're going to do it. And then you do it. You do it well. This person who doesn't feel that you're qualified for it will never feel that you are. The only way is to show them after it has been completed. So that's what we're looking at with that step 1. You're going to rewind and reflect. Again, do not focus on you're making yourself the victim or making yourself the bully. You don't want to blame yourself, and you certainly don't want to go back thinking, well, I just did everything right. You want to go back and you're going to look at, what could I have adjusted just a little bit differently for me, for my peace of mind, for me to be productive? I know that was a lot. I know we see some questions going on. Okay. I don't see any just yet specific about this, but if you do have any, please send them and let's continue to talk about it. Okay, now let's go on to step 2, come back to reality, also known as it needs to stop. In my talk, I talked about how when I'm driving to work or I'm taking a shower, I think about previous things that happened. And then I drift off into this scenario of everything that can go wrong. And we all do it. A lot of times when we're ready to make an action, we're usually thinking about the things that can go wrong, and we create a new storyline for that, even though it hasn't happened. So keeping that in mind, let's go through our scenario. Okay, so there is a resident office bully. This is the passive-aggressive king or queen that rules the team. Even though other teammates feel this person is catty or messy, they stay on this person's good side because it is easier to get along with them than be against them. Naturally, our messy bully is BFFs with our manager. They gossip together, they plot together, and they scheme together. They have never done anything to officially get them in trouble, like HR trouble. So nothing that can be documented to be sent of, or anything that has hurt or hindered you from actually doing your job. So it's messy, it's cattiness. Now you're working on a project with the bully and they ask you about a task. You mention you'll do part A and they'll do part B. You both agree. 2 weeks later, the manager is asking for A and B. B isn't complete, and the bully reaches out to you via email and copies everyone, including the manager, and asks, hey, why haven't you completed this? So that is our scenario, right? So you're blamed for something you obviously didn't do, and they've copied a bunch of people. Now in this, we have to now think about the action we're going to take, and we'll talk about some of the actions available for that particular scenario. But usually when we're ready to start that action, we think about, okay, let's say it's an email. If I send an email and I respond and I have everyone copied, then they'll respond with this, and then I'll have to respond with this, and then they'll respond with that. And again, we've created a new storyline with a new different plot. And we're always making assumptions about what can happen. And it's super easy to do that because usually we're going by historical data. So you're going by what has probably happened in the past, and it's not too hard to kind of guess what you think will happen, especially if you're very familiar with the person. But at the same time, what you're doing is putting a self-doubt. You're creating that negative energy that for something that really hasn't happened. Now, in this scenario, there was a situation, and that we know happened. So now it goes into how do we address that without making continued assumptions. So in the slide, you'll see, don't make assumptions. And I like to refer to Don Miguel Ruiz's 4 agreements. And that first agreement is about not making assumptions. Also going to stick to what actually happened. Focus on what can go right instead of what can go wrong. That's another thing that we do, which is really harming ourselves when we're looking at the decision we want to make. We always think about the 1 or 2 things that can go wrong instead of the 80 things that can go fantastic. So as we're exploring the options to respond to that particular scenario, let's focus a lot on, okay, what can go right from that? And then also acknowledge the negative thought. I don't want you to go through this and thinking, hey, all she's saying is just turn the other cheek or, just take the high road. That's not what it's about. It's where we're human. Even though I have put these steps down and I've used them and they have worked for me, I continue to use them because I continue to work with other people. And it doesn't change the fact that you get frustrated, you get aggravated, you get irritated. There's a negative thought. If I want to make an action, I'm going to automatically think, this can happen. It's really retraining yourself. Okay, that can happen, but it could go great. This could go well, or I could get this outcome. It's like a muscle for your brain. You have to continuously work on that. So back with that scenario, we have a couple of options that we can look at. When you're responding to an email and someone has copied a whole bunch of people on it and they basically called you out on something, they're saying, hey, you didn't do this. And you're trying to defend yourself and you're going to say, yes, I did it. It is very important that you choose the correct words because for the people who are not in the situation, so this is our bully, this is us, this is all the audience sees. You going at each other. It really doesn't matter who's right. Like that's all they see. They say if two pigs are fighting in the mud. They just see dirt. You really don't know who's on what side. So your focus has to be factual. It has to be, this is what took place, without going into the additional tone that the originator may have had. So they're writing and saying, hey, you didn't do B. You're responding back, thanks so much for your message. I know that can seem passive aggressive, but in the tone, again, we're adjusting the tone. Thanks so much for your message. Part B was assigned on this due date to you. If you need any help with that, happy to work with you on it. And going over the part A, that's the part you were doing, and you make that the focus of how that is complete. So you're kind of pivoting to get away from that negative piece, because that's the only way to protect your brand. Really interested with some comments or questions about that. I do have several examples of this is happening to me, and I've gone through a couple of techniques. One, it is only responding to all for the fact that you want to make sure that this is clear if these people are stakeholders. If the people who were copied on the email are not stakeholders and they were simply, the originator was simply doing it for cattiness, messiness, I would only reply back to those who would truly need to know. Again, you're not trying to react to the cattiness, you're trying to react to preserve your brand. All right. Guilty of thinking of what will go wrong. Right. That's so true. We all do it. I do it daily. But I'm retraining to make sure, and I also keep positive little notes. Let's go to step 3. Vent and release, also known as we need to stop. Now here, this is where I introduce the vent buddy. Now, your vent buddy, this is your coach. This is your cheerleader. This is your, I use this, I guess not a metaphor, I guess it's a scene in my head of thinking of your front row. If you were presenting something on stage, who would be invited to your front row? Who would be cheering you on? Who would be there? When I presented this TED Talk in, I had my top friends in the front row and my husband was there. And he heard me rehearse this presentation so many times, he knew it by memory. And so he was right there almost mouthing a lot of the things that I was saying and mouthing the steps because he's in my top row, he's cheering me on. And you have some people who are not there. They're not your front row. They don't deserve to be in your front row. And that is something that we have to really look at and start. We have to realize and accept. Not everyone is meant to be there for your front row. However, your vent buddy, that's an established relationship. This isn't someone where you might be working on a project together. You guys are all working on the same thing, so you know all the same people and you understand the same frustrations. So it is very easy to confide in that person. They can completely relate. They know exactly what you're going through. Except if you don't have an established relationship, they don't owe you anything. We sometimes put this expectation on other people that if I tell you, hey, it's between me and you, that's a commitment. Like that's a signed contract. They can say, yeah, no problem. But they didn't sign anything with you. That's not some true commitment, maybe in their eyes. So that's something we put on them. So we set this expectation and then we get disappointed when they don't follow through. That is why a vent buddy is so important, because that is an established relationship with that contract. That when I'm confiding in you, that it stays between us. So now that we understand our vent buddy, we understand that now we have to look at how conversations go with our vent buddy. We naturally just want to first start out as, you're angry. I need to get something out. That's why I tell the vent buddy, because you're venting about something. We need to learn how to redirect that conversation to positivity and actionable outcomes. What can we do? What can we do so this doesn't happen? Or how do we limit this happening? When you're talking with your vent buddy, you are responsible for being accepting, so that way listening to or having a discussion about what can change from this. And as the vent buddy, that's the receiver, you have to be able to guide your friend back. You have to be able to change that really angry or upset or frustrated conversation into a constructive conversation with, again, some actionable tasks. So let's take a look at a scenario. You're working on a project with 3 other people, and each of them are close work friends. Put work friends in quotes, because a lot of times they can be frenemies with a lot of people, and they're friends when they're together, but they kind of really don't like each other. There's so much drama and negativity with those 3 individuals. You're afraid your project team's brand will be associated with their individual brand. Now, during a planning call, you jump on the call a couple of minutes late and notice they're just speaking poorly about other people, not working on the project, and just being overall negative. As you try to shift gears, they get quiet, and you hear typing and pinging in the background, as if they're all speaking to one another without you. So this is a definite vent buddy situation, right? You have to deal with that. In this project, you got these 3 other people who just like kind of being negative and maybe not productive, and you're trying to make sure that the entire project team isn't associated with their individual brand. You want to uplift that, right? Or elevate that. So when you're having that conversation with your vent buddy, get that out. It's okay to be frustrated about that. That's a normal thing. And then also it's normal for you to be disappointed when you're not accepted. That took me a long time to deal with. That I'm not going to always be accepted, I'm not going to always be liked, and I'm not going to always be included. But I do have to be able to collaborate with people who may feel that way regardless. So in situations where you need to elevate the brand of your project to over the individual people, that's something that you have to work on with the work. Making sure deadlines are always met, making sure emails are responded to quickly, making sure that when you are listing not the people's name, but whether you call it this and this project team or this person, you have to give it its own individual identity to have it not associated with the individual person. And that's the only way you can change that, because we're human. If we knew we had 3 problem children working in a group, your natural thing is, be a tough group, right? But if we start to give the actual work its own identity, that does help elevate that. That was one of our preloaded questions. We'll get to that as we go into the Q&As, and I can go into some more detail if you didn't quite answer one of those preloaded questions. All right. Hi, can you guys hear me?
Yes, we can, Stacy. Thanks for coming back.
Oh, of course. Sorry about that. It wouldn't be the same without any connectivity issues during a virtual event.
Of course. Of course.
I'm not sure how far we got. In my mind, as I was still talking before I realized I was at step 4. So I will go, let's hop to step 4. And anything that I did not cover, if we still have time, I promise I'll go back to it. But step 4, learn a new language, also known as we need to talk. Now, in my talk, I spoke about how everyone has a type of work language, almost like love language. You know how they said people receive gifts or positive affirmations and things like that. We have a work language. Now, my work language is I'm very all about email and text, and now that we have video, that kind of replaces like the phones from before we had conference calls, especially like a million years ago, well before 2020. So I've always been like that. I feel like an email, it can go in a quick ping or some form like that, and I use it as my to-do list. That's my work language. If I pick up the phone to call, or if I'm doing a video call with you, it is because I need something that I cannot explain with words by just typing. It will take way too long to type, or if something is wrong, like it's a problem. Like this is a 911 and I need immediate response. Now, because that's my work language and that's how I send, when I receive, if someone is saying, hey, can you pull up really quick? I want to do a video call. I'm thinking something went wrong. Like, oh my gosh, what happened? And they're like, nothing, just wanted to talk. So that's weird to me, right? But that's my work language. I'm like, wait a minute, you're sending me a video. Something should be wrong. It should be a fire. That should be happening, not just how it's taken. So anyway, that's my work language. It's really good for you to identify yours because it really helps to overcome certain communication barriers. Now, with that said, let's talk about email. Email is super easy to misinterpret tone. And because my work language is so heavily focused on communication, such as email and text, there's a lot of times where I could totally miss the tone. Now, I'm the type of person, I speak very bubbly with email. I'm an exclamation mark, I'm a smiley face, all of that. That's me. I'm very bubbly with it. You have some people who are very direct. So if I were to ask a person for a assignment, I said, can you make sure you get that? I'm like, hi, happy Thursday. Will you be able to get this assignment over to me later today? Not rushing, just need it. That's more of me. There are some people saying, hey, Thursday, need the assignment, thanks, bye. And that's it. And that's okay. We all have our different tones. But again, it can lead to communication barriers. Now with emails, the way we send is usually the way we can possibly receive. And if you don't know the individual, you may read the email the way you could have possibly sent it. So any tone that you're recognizing, if you don't know that individual, it's usually the tone you'd probably have if you would have written it. That's a fun fact. So let's go through this email. I'm going to read it out loud, and then you guys can read it and just see if it's the same tone you had. Okay. Hello, receiver. I haven't heard from you in a month, and I'm looking for research to finish my report. I can suggest some tips to help you with your time management. This is a skill that will serve you well in an organization such as this. Going forward, if you need help planning your day, I'm happy to place task-specific reminders on your calendar to help you keep you organized. Let me know how I can help, and as always, I appreciate your partnership. Best regards, Sender. So that's how I received it. Now, if you read it differently, that could be, if you were sending that, maybe that's what you would have meant. Maybe that's what you would have had to tone. But I know if I would have sent that, especially if I really don't know the person, probably how I would expect them to read it in their head. But that's not always the case, which I've noticed. Also, just different things with like smiley faces. I didn't realize a lot of people might use that as some type of passive aggressive, like you'll have a passive aggressive comment and you close it up with a smiley face so that way it doesn't look that bad. Didn't realize that. So then as I might send it with me, with my normal bubbly, they're like, what does she mean by that smiley face? So it can be misinterpreted. When these situations, we have to make sure, no matter your work language, it's time to speak to that person directly, whether that's in person, whether that's a video call. Communication when it comes to written type of correspondence is the easiest to be taken out of context. And also understanding someone's work language. Like I mentioned, I might have all of the bubbly in the world. If the other person is just a little bit more direct, that doesn't mean they're the villain. It doesn't mean they're bad. And for me to take it that way, that's really not fair to them. And vice versa. So that's why it's important for you to kind of recognize that. It's easier for you to really interpret different tones or to meet them where their work language is. Getting some comments. I read that email totally passive aggressive. Yes, and actually if we go to the next slide, you'll notice I've kind of highlighted some words in there that definitely, when someone puts in a time of a time period, haven't heard from you in over a month. You know, okay, you're calling me out. I know how long you haven't heard from me. I also have a timestamp on emails. Okay. And then when they're suggesting that you're not good at time management, you're just like, okay, you seem to know me very well. And also that going forward, you think, very simple. Like it's not, how can you make going forward passive aggressive? Like, find a way, we're so creative. It definitely can, because it's more of that, and next time, that's That's how that can be taken. And happy to place task-specific reminders on your calendar. Didn't realize you were in management, but okay. So yes, totally can, but then depending on the individual, totally could not. So you just want to make sure maybe they were legitimately trying to be helpful. So in order to do that, we would have to really understand their work language and pull up so that way we can know and recognize that tone. So great comments on that. Unsolicited advice usually feels passive aggressive to me, especially when I'm being used to having to justify myself. Absolutely. Absolutely. Unsolicited advice always gives me that, well, was I doing it wrong? You know, right? You kind of second guess that. So I totally agree. Okay, let's go to step 5. I'm keeping an eye at the timer. Recognize and protect, also known as we need to take a walk. Okay, let's go through a scenario. You're speaking on a Zoom call, and in the middle of your presentation, someone who's clearly off of mute makes the comment, "This is really dumb." Now, you pause mid-sentence because you, along with everyone on the call, hears that inappropriate comment. You stop and ask, "Well, does anyone have any questions?" And that person, originally off mute, is now more silent than ever. You finish your presentation, and of course, your confidence it's a little smaller than it was before. And at the end of the call, the person that made the comment reaches out to you and makes small talk, never acknowledging or apologizing for the comments you know they made, but instead goes into a rant about how inconsiderate others can be. One thing I noticed in corporate America, that if a person doesn't have anything else, if they don't have anything else, they may not have the skill, the education, the leadership, the title, they don't have anything else. They find a way to have audacity. I don't know how, but it is what it is. And scenarios like this, it's unfortunately what I've seen so many times. And it almost catches you off guard. Like, I know you said that. You know you said that. Everyone knows you said that. But yet, you're going to speak as if you didn't say that. And it's so weird. You can't add logic around things like that, which is also something I really noticed and had to accept. But when we have reached this step, at this point, it is time to understand what you need to put your energy in. People who do these things, or just overall people who are more into the cattiness or just making a job harder by making the environment toxic, you aren't going to change them. In this scenario where the person is speaking this way and then they want to have a conversation, you need to make the first available exit. This is not where if you're working with someone and we have to do a job, we need to work on that job. But the additional things do not need to be there. A lot of times you hear these quotes where, yeah, let's keep our friends close and keep our enemies closer. Why? I mean, I really want someone to be able to answer that to me, because in that case, not only do you feel that you're learning what they're up to, but they're also learning you. And they are not, like I went through before, they don't deserve to be in your top row. And if you're more focused on what they can do wrong, you don't have time to really focus on all the great people that can do right. This is not something that is going to stop you from working. This is someone who clearly needs more attention that they don't deserve from you. They really don't. Think of friends who, it's a friend's party and you're going to give them a gift. Like, depending on what you can, you usually don't say like, hey, I'm going to give you a gift. I'm going to buy you a house, right? Usually not the most appropriate birthday gift, depending on that type of relationship. But at the same time, you're thinking, gosh, hundreds of $1,000s, maybe $1 million. That's a very expensive gift. But one thing that we have that's more expensive that we seem to give away so freely is our time. So you're willing to put more time and more energy trying to understand why that person would do that, and not giving something that you cannot give back. At that point, rather get you a house, right? I can't get that time back. So before we're so eager to try to understand or try to figure out why they would do this, we need to move away. We need to learn that this is them And this is what I choose not to put my energy into. Now, once you get to this part with this person, you've already tried to adjust your approach. You've already had your vent session with your buddy. You've already learned what their work language is and tried to adjust your approach to it. You've done the steps. And now it's time to accept this is who they are. This is why I will work with them for the sake of the job and respect their title in the organization. But that does not mean you have to continue giving energy beyond that. You can be cordial without being their best friend. And that takes a lot of practice, what I had to learn to do. And the crazy part about it is the more that I started to focus on that, the more those same people were really trying to get my attention. I guess it's more of that thing where people want to be a part of an exclusive party. So if you're more available to them, they take advantage of it. But then if you kind of guard yourself more, that's when they're trying to fight and climb your wall to get to it. So it's something that takes a lot of practice. And it doesn't feel good. I want to tell you that. A lot of when I was going through these steps and when I was working on it, you want to be liked. It makes the job easier when you're liked. It makes the job easier when we have harmony and when we all get along. You don't want that tension. And when I first started, it did have that tension, especially when I realized with certain people, I have to be guarded for my peace. But as I continued on with it, it did get easier, a lot easier. And it started to actually make me feel better. I felt great about the relationships I had. I keep this rule of thumb that if one person doesn't like me, as long as I have 3 others that really do. Because if that one person is like, Stacy is this and she's not good, you have these other 3 people who are like, what, Stacy? Then that kind of makes them look crazy. So it's kind of a rule of thumb I keep. It does take a lot of practice with it. And it's not something that comes natural when I adjusted myself for these behaviors. That's something else I want to mention. All right. So I think, am I still doing good on time? I'll check the moderator chat. Or if we made it to where we're going to start with Q&A. I was practicing to make sure I didn't go over. All right, guys, am I okay with time? Take that as, let me see. Yep, we can start Q&A. Okay, perfect.
Awesome. Stacy, thank you so much. That's really sort of a great set of tips and tricks and scenarios to run through. Really appreciate your time here. We have a list of questions that have either come in through our chat online during the session today, as well as ahead of time. So the first one that I want to start out with is, I think, everybody's favorite and the fine line we all walk, which is, what if you love the gossip, but you hate the drama? What do you do?
I love that question. That is so hilarious. And I'm going to reference a TV show because I love pop culture. But one of the things, if you love the gossip, but you don't want to get involved in the drama, that means you cannot take sides. You have to listen as the bystander and just absorb. The second that you give your opinion or lean towards one side, you've now chosen and you've inserted yourself into the drama. Like, have you ever heard where someone is telling you a story and then they're like, oh my goodness. Completely biased and absorb. And there is on, I don't know if you guys watched The Crown, which I all of a sudden got addicted to, and how the queen, she stays completely out of it. She never gives her opinion. And the one time she tried to, it completely backfired. So when you're thinking about that, you gotta take the Queen of England approach and just you listen and not.
So another good one we got, especially because it can have a bunch of different facets to it, is how do you recommend dealing with a bully? And this could be a bully, or this could even be, the person who they're really good at their job, but they leave scorched earth behind them. That is a favorite of your manager. So your manager doesn't really deal with it. What are some tricks there?
Oh, definitely. I had this situation where our bully, now the bully, they know enough to stay on payroll, right? They don't do anything that can completely get them in HR trouble. So everything they do is just such an annoyance just to make it more of a toxic environment. And when they have the ear of the manager, it makes it even more challenging to do. So one of the things that I had to do where it was so annoying for this person to constantly just in calls, they'll start off with negativity or they'll do these things. So what I did, I reached out to the manager and I came from the part as if I didn't know how close they were, right? Mm-hmm. So I spoke to them and I said, hey, I just really wanted to speak with you because I truly value our relationship. And I just wanted to let you know some of the things that were happening because I know that with your role that you are equipped to do something about it and you would want to know this because this is your team. And I laid it on very thick. I want to be honest about it. I was saying, because I know as a manager, you do the right thing. And before this escalated, you would want to be involved. And I trust your opinion and all of that. And what happened, even though probably the second we stopped talking, that manager probably picked up the phone and called the bully and was like, can you believe what Stacy said? Like Stacy said this and this and this. Mm-hmm. But that's fine. That's the part that doesn't matter. The part that does matter. Now that they are aware of the concern or what is happening, they have no choice but to address it with that individual. They have no choice because at that point, it is saying you knew and you had a conversation and they continued with the behaviors, then it's on them and they've now inserted themselves into it. So I know it seems like you're trying to manipulate it, but sometimes you have to. You use their game and you make it so that way it's comfortable and you have to be able to survive and be productive in your job too. And if you're always constantly having to just deal with that much tension or just that much irritation, it can lead to you not being productive. So that is how I address that.
Okay. One of the questions that came in on our Q&A from today's chat, which I think is super prevalent and I think happens to all of us, is how do you create boundaries with a venting buddy, call it your work wife, your work husband, whatever, when their venting starts to become too much and the emotional labor of that, the weight of that is just dragging you down?
Oh, that is a great question because that can totally happen. And then especially if you really have a great relationship with this person and you truly do care, you're emotionally now invested. So they're upset, and all of a sudden that can upset your day. And because that's happening so often, you find yourself a little bit more upset than you need to be because of their situation. So in this case, it will be first, because if you have an established relationship, you do owe them their honesty. And you're saying, I am here for you. I'm there. I definitely want to. But at this time, right now, what I'm working on or what I'm doing, I just need to limit and really focus on this. So let's talk maybe 2 times a week, or you schedule some time. Try to turn it into that. I have a good friend who, in some form or fashion, we speak every day. But as I started to have to concentrate on something very specific, I would schedule time for us to be able to communicate, and I would adjust the tone of the conversation. So if they start with what went wrong, I will go over some things that went right, especially if it's something I heard about them. I heard you nailed this, and then we will go into that conversation because you want to keep it. If they're a great friend, you want to keep that relationship, but you do want to pivot the conversation and then just put those organic boundaries as opposed to just stopping them in their tracks. by being able to schedule the time so you can control how the duration and how often your guys are speaking.
Okay. What if your boss is the source of the drama? What do you do?
That is another really great question. If they're limiting your work, or they're in some way are controlling how productive you're able to be, that's going to be a whole different situation, because that definitely needs to be escalated. If the drama is more of the frustration, cattiness, and things like that, that's where we have to learn to go around the manager. The manager, however, whatever view they have of you, and if you don't fall in line in their inner circle of the drama, they are not going to have you in their loop. You're not going to change it. That's what it is when it comes to that. So then you need to look at what relationships can I establish around them, whether it be with their peer group or if it's with the manager above. And it's not where you're going with the manager above because you're talking about that manager. It's where you are sharing your work, your experience, your successes around and above your manager, so that way your manager has no way to react. Because imagine if your manager's peers and their boss is saying, oh my gosh, what a great job Stacy's doing. She knocked it out of the park with this. They're going to be like, oh man, I didn't even know, that's great. And then feel that they have to catch up, because in those situations, it's harder for them to talk bad against you when so many of their peers and others are speaking well, because then it makes it look like, what's wrong with them? It's like, how are we all getting along with this person and you don't? So establishing that, do not focus on trying to change your manager. Focus on creating relationships around and above.
Great. So I think that has covered, a lot of the questions that we have here today. Any of the other ones that we can address separately, I think we'll give some people back some time this morning. I want to thank you so much again for your time, Stacy. This has been a really sort of illuminating, great discussion. Really appreciate all of the information you've given us. On behalf of the Women's Tech Forum, again, I want to thank you for your time and let you know that we are intending to donate in your name to a charity of your choice, $2,000. So we'll be in touch after this to figure out where you would like that to go. And then wrapping up, thank you so much to everyone in our WTF community, whether you are coming to these a lot or this is your first time coming. We very much appreciate you spending, whether it was your morning, your afternoon, or your evening with us. And we will have a posting of this recording on our website soon, so you can come back, view it again if you need to go through all of these different scenarios, or you want to share it out. Wherever you are in the world, we hope you have a fantastic rest of your day, and thank you so much. Bye.